staff don't want that in any more time delays than council does. So I may turn the mic over to Shelley and she can explain our talk.
Go ahead, Shelley.
Through the chair, thank you, Mr. Cridlin. We discussed this today, and certainly the RFP process for the dollar value of the consultant will have an impact on the timeline. So just in discussion and through the clerk, this is what I would propose for council to give some consideration to, that council permit an exemption to Norfolk County Purchasing Policy EBS 02 to permit a modified quotation tendering process to expedite the hiring of a consultant as outlined in this report. So we would still get competitive bids, but we would be able to reduce the timelines associated with going out to a formal bid document. I think that would be a reasonable approach given the timelines that we want this report back to council.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that clarification. If what I've heard that we will have the facility for a practice pad or whatever you want to call it, then I'll withdraw my motion. Thank you.
Okay.
Through the chair, I do apologize. I think I got more onto the exemption of the bylaw, but yes, Talbot will be like it was at the end of this year. Doors to the ice surface will be closed for watchers, and definitely rink is open for practices, that sort of thing.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more question before we move ahead with this. Resolution 22 in our budget said that the Talbot Street Arena floor study be reduced from $20,000 to $10,000. Does that mean we're not moving ahead with that floor study and we have $10,000 to go back?
Through the chair, no, that was the money we spent to cut the inspection panels and to generate the engineering report, which led to the closure of the seating area. So that money is spent.
And just one last clarification. Is the only group using Talbot Arena in summer just the lacrosse team?
I'm getting nods from the rest of staff that it is only lacrosse during summer.
We have staff there, we run air conditioners to keep the building cool, we spend hydro and all just for one club? How often are they in there?
Yeah. Through the chair, it looks like it's pretty well nightly. It's a well-used facility.
Okay, thank you.
For lacrosse.
That's it. I do have something I want to say. So go ahead, Mike.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I mentioned the need for terms of reference here, and I just wonder if we can add a paragraph in here that a terms of reference be prepared for the proposed multi-use hub facility for review by council. Would that be in order?
Through the chair, I would think that's part of the process of hiring a consultant, and probably step 1 or 2 is to get a term of reference that we agree upon, or council agrees upon. That's how we stage and plan the rest of the process.
So the consultant would do the terms of reference, or would the staff put the terms of reference together?
I can see staff, maybe even some community members working with the consultant, but it'll be staff and the consultant bringing it to this level with what we're comfortable with, and then you deciding on if you agree or changes you want to make.
And council would see it before to fine-tune the terms of reference?
Through the chair, I can't see why not. I haven't got a lot of experience in this sort of thing, but I think if you ask, definitely you need to be part of it. You have to be part of it, actually.
We're talking mega millions here, so it's important.
Yeah, staff
Perhaps,
definitely want council
Mr.
inside.
Shoemaker can help us out, being that he's been through this whole process once.
Shelley?
Through the chair and through Mr. Cridlin as well, that would be a natural progression of developing the work and scope of work that the consultant is going to do. So as Mr. Cridlin indicated, that there'll be some initial meetings, and then we can bring back a draft terms of reference just to outline what the project timelines are and the terms that council agrees to.
Okay, as long as we see it, thanks.
Well, basically, I'm going to have my say now. I'm going to support what's here, but to some degree, I've got the 65 calls and emails and everything like that, but I also got about 15 that are saying that are against what's going to happen and what's going to happen with our roads and all those types of things. And we know from last year's budget that we probably cut, what, $2 million out of our road budget? Are we going to be able to fund all this? To me, the end that I will continue to push is if the province and the feds come up with their third, well then we need to raise a third through Norfolk, whether it's part of the county and part of the people out there, to do some fundraising to make sure that it is. The other thing that we need to do somehow or other is to make sure all of the people in Norfolk have to pay for this. So theoretically, we need to be talking to all of Norfolk, not just part of it. We need to talk, saying that, well, we got 2 or 3 people from one area or something like that, that was what the people want. I'm not 100% certain that that's true. So theoretically, we need to make sure that the information goes out there and people understand, and we'll see where it goes from there. And I agree with what Councillor Wells said. We'll find out once we get there as to what it's going to cost us and where we're going to go. Other than that, I guess that's all I have to say, and unless there's any other, I'll call the motion. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I just want to be sure exactly what it is we're voting on. Is it Councillor Black's original motion then with reference to including further consultation with the community and this coming back prior to 2018 capital budget? Is that correct?
Is that it? Sorry? Okay.
Through the chair, plus the purchasing policy exemption clause. Thank you.
Any further questions? All those in favor? That is carried unanimously for now. Thank you very much. If you need to leave, we will let you leave, and we will get on with the rest of our agenda. You know, I remember some of these. And they had to be dealt with.
I know. Yeah, and sometimes we'll do like friendly amendments, so Peter will have to read that, and we'll just kind of throw it in. But yeah, I'm gonna ask Andy about that because.
Well, I'd ask Andy, because I think what we've done in the past is somebody put a motion forward, and then we made amendments to what that person put forward was key. So
Yeah.
I think
I
he
see.
didn't want his motion, how should I put it, it's not what we wanted, theoretically, so we'll see what develops.
Yeah.
But anyway, talk to Andy about that.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. I haven't dealt with that in.
No, I know.
Yeah.
the nod that perhaps Shelley Darlington
pieces of equipment met the specifications at the time of bid closing and all the requirements. And then what happens, it goes over to our fleet division now, and they reviewed all of the proposals, and they all met the requirements outlined in the bid document, and they are recommending the lowest compliant bidder. So this bid from Integrated Distributions at 108,000 approximately meets all the specifications outlined in the bid document. As far as, is it a demonstrator or is it brand new with 0 hours on that, I don't have the detail of the spec sheets here, but it did meet the minimum requirements.
Councillor Columbus, then Brunton.
Well, what Shelley mentioned is very important, but I do have something I want to raise here. It talks about it being approved in the 2016 capital budget, which is probably 18 months past. And had we tendered this earlier, would I'm thinking that perhaps this machine is maybe built in the U.S. or something, and it would have been perhaps cheaper, lower cost, had we bought it earlier, a year ago. Any comments on that?
Through the chair, the best I can do in that is, being a 2016 capital budget, staff, would have tendered into 16. It's probably just timing of other tenders going out the door. There's got to be a first and a last, so this just could have been the tail end. That's the best I can do on that, Councillor.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Brunton.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a big difference if you're buying a demo. I mean, technically, it's a used machine. Demo or not demo, it's like buying a new car. If it's been driven for some time, executive driven or whatever, it's a used vehicle, in my opinion. They call it a demo so they can knock the price down. But if we're buying a demo, everybody should be allowed to bid on a demo. So I think it's important that staff get back to us with the proper information. Does that make sense?
I would think so.
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
I'm looking at Shelley. We can get back, but I would, and again, Shelley and I don't have the spec in front of us, but that spec would have been decided on. So whether that was a demo's considered 50 hours or 60 hours or 100 hours, these machines would all have met what we tendered out. So any results we get back did meet the tender specification. And the decision on how many hours made a demo was made in the past, and we did it with other equipment as well. But if you do want, we can bring the spec back next week or email. I'll deal with Shelley at SLT tomorrow morning.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll recommend we defer this until we find out further information. Heck, it could have 500 hours on it. I don't know. Maybe there is none. Maybe it is a proper bid and it's a new machine. I don't know. I guess we need to know. So I'll ask for a deferred until we find out. Great.
Are you making that a motion?
Sure.
A deferral?
I'll make that a motion.
Well, deferral takes precedent. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll support the deferral as well. I guess normally if you're buying a piece of equipment for $100,000 or more, I'd like to see the mechanics report. There has to be a resale value if this is a replacement piece of equipment, and a used backhoe is $10,000. So here we are looking for $9,000 out of a capital equipment pool reserve that I don't even know if there's any money in it anyway. But surely maybe that resale could knock that down and it's not a budget amendment, or was the trade-in in on this value? Who knows? But I could use some more details. I'll support the deferral.
Shelley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I believe the details from the mechanics report was presented in the 2016 capital budget, but we'll pull that information as well. We'll pull the specification sheets because it will outline what the minimum requirements are for the piece of equipment, and we can pull that together quickly Wednesday or Thursday this week so council can make a decision next week.
So you think you'll have something ready for, okay? Councillor, John?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to answer Councillor Height's question or comment, when we sell a vehicle or trade it in, that money doesn't become part of the savings if you want to put it in those quotation marks, when you buy the vehicle, that money goes into the reserve fund. So we approve the purchase of it at 100% of its value. Anything that we get either by selling it or as a trade-in or whatever the case may be comes to the county and it goes into the reserve fund to be used to purchase equipment. We don't apply it against the purchase is really what I'm saying.
Okay, deferral. All those in favor? I should get something back next week. Okay, go ahead.
You, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak. Just before we leave this, I'd like to ask staff, and Councillor Wells brought this up, I guess, in the context of a call he'd had, but when one looks at maintenance over a period of years for a piece of equipment or a vehicle, I guess I'm directing this to Shelley perhaps as much as anything. Is that in any way sort of accounted for in our tender? In other words, are contractors or bidders asked to indicate whether service would be on site or whether the piece of equipment or vehicle would have to be transported to the dealership, in which case there's obviously a real cost to the county every time that piece of equipment would have to be moved. And therefore, can we not legally, appropriately, if you like, give recognition for local bidders in this context?
Through the chair, we can put parameters in the bid document on service requirements that the vehicle needs to be serviced within so many hours. We can't necessarily indicate that service needs to be provided in this location. The bidder may decide if they win a contract, they may set up a local office. So there are some parameters that we can put in there to meet our technical requirements, but we can't specifically say we're going to give local preference to someone in the community.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that, Shelley, and that's fine, but again, Mr. Chair, I know our purchasing policy is coming back to us at some point. To me, this particular item would be one where very legitimately we could say, and I'm not saying we're preferencing local bidders, but there would be a dollar value associated with having that piece of equipment or vehicle serviced at home where it's not costing us several hours of labor to have it transported to Hamilton or Toronto or wherever it might be. So I'm going to ask staff to at least consider that when they're bringing their recommendations back to us for purchasing policy amendments this summer.
Through the chair, we'll confirm what the service requirements were on this vehicle. In most cases, we indicate what type of service is required in that amount of time, but I will confirm that. And as well, we will consider any type of wording we can put in the purchasing policy to not get us in trouble for local preference.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, if I may add with some of my background with equipment, we have our own fleet. So the machine would come with warranty, and certain items that were done would be covered under warranty. And they're specified that it's sometimes labor is included, and when that is with the warranty that the dealer would come to our garage. After the warranty, most of the repairs are done in-house. And then I don't believe on equipment that, depending on the price, it's like a farmer with a tractor. If you bought off Norfolk Tractor, you could get it repaired there, or if you rather deal with somebody in Tillsonburg that deals with John Deere's or cases, we can go to a local dealer for repairs, is my understanding.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that clarification, and I used the wrong wording. I was thinking in terms of warranty work.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all, not service.
Okay. Anything further? If not, we'll move on to page 12. Staff report PW 1725, award of contract RFP PWE 1773, engineering services for a Schedule B municipal class environmental assessment for the Long Point Causeway and Bridge be received as information, and that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the mayor and clerk manager of council services to execute a contract with the firm of Parson Inc. for contract RFP PWE 1773 in the amount of $142,960, excluding taxes. Questions? Councillor Height,
I'm just going to move the recommendation.
you're moving the extra, okay? Any questions? All those in favor then? That was quick. Thank you very much. Page 17, staff report HS 1703, continuous quality improvements and indicator report, fourth quarter 2016. Go ahead.
Thank you through the chair to council. That staff report HS 17-03 for continuous quality improvement and indicator report, fourth quarter of 2016, be received as information. That the Norview Lodge Committee of Management has governance responsibility within the Long-Term Cares Act of 2007 and regulations for its long-term care home. It is required to exercise due diligence in monitoring the activities of the home. The chosen indicators are reflective of information that is tracked in departments or is mandated as reporting requirements within the Long-Term Care Service Accountability Agreement within the Local Health Integration Network, otherwise known as a LIN. In conclusion, continuous quality improvement and benchmarking information will be provided to the community management on a regular basis. And submitting the report, I will be open for any questions.
Councillor Wells.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick questions. With regard to new hires, I was just surprised that the number of, that's 33. 33 new hires in a year, is that what that? It's about the fifth one down. New hires, replacement staff.
Through the chair to Councillor Walls, that's correct. That's 33 within the year.
That means that you're interviewing a lot.
That, through the chair again to Councillor Walls, that is very correct. We do.
Is that because the staff is getting older and therefore you have to replace them? Is that, or have they found work elsewhere? Or
through the chair to Councillor Walls, that's a combination of both. We have had a series of retirements last year, as well as some resignations. The other factor is that with the amount of staff that we have at Norview, some of them attain a part-time job or position, and then they would look, because they're fresh out of school, they would get a full-time job or more hours somewhere else, and they do move on.
okay, thank you. And on the next page, on page 2, with regard to falls, I see that falls, is that because of the frail condition of many of the residents?
Through the chair to Councillor Walls, that is part of the condition. We obviously do assessments on unstable gaits and regular physiotherapy with the residents, but with the Ministry of Health's movement to as close to zero restraints, falls are sometimes part of that process. Back quite a few years ago, there were, such as for easiest understanding, there were seat belts and those types of things that residents were placed in. Now with the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care's move provincially on removing those restraints, there are, the falls do increase because of that.
Wow, I'm just surprised. That's over a fall and a half per day, per year. Wow, thank you, Mr. Chair. And there's nothing you can do, it's just very noticeable.
Through the chair to Councillor Walls, just to answer that, that's one of the reasons why we put so many prevention in. So if there is a fall, because we do promote independability, that the falls are recovered with cushions, fall mats, those types of things, so that the outcome is much more positive than before.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Page 19 of our agenda package, Bill. But middle of the page there, it talks about the number of reported staff incidents, and in the fourth quarter, it more than doubled over the previous couple months. And that's between Thanksgiving and New Year's, I take it. So why would that, first of all, what does the staff incidents mean? And then why would it be such a big jump at the last quarter?
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus, staff incidents are staff that have injured themselves during the course of work, and that could be any different kind of conditions. It could be even slips, trips, and falls due to wet floors, those types of things coming out. But it's just coincidentally that it is at that time. There can be any other quarter throughout the year that could have a higher number, just depending on what goes on.
Thank you.
Councillor Sonnenberg.
Thank you. On page 20, where are we here? Incidents against staff, residents to staff. 532 instances over the year. I find that disturbing. What's classed as an incident anyway? Does it have to be physical? Can it be verbal? There was one lost time to injury. Could you explain a little bit about the incidents between staff and residents?
Through the chair to Councilor Sonnenberg, you are correct. It could be physical. It could be verbal. It could even be the close proximity of non-contact, but very, very close to it. They are recorded as incidents from residents to staff, and obviously an incident report is filled out on every incident or near miss when it comes to that, because they're predicting something that could move forward. Then we put actions in place, whether it's reapproach, whether it's we involve the medical director, whether it's something to do with medications, whether it's behaviors. We have what's called Behavior Supports Ontario, which is a part of group that the province offers us to allocate outside resources at no cost to the county to come in and do interventions, look at behaviors, look at patterns, look at past history. The resident could be triggered by something as severe as they think that I look like somebody that caused them harm in their younger years, but I'm not. And we've had that on multiple occasions that, had accusations, well, I know that person. Well, it's not. It's just what they're going through. So there are those incidents can be physical, but quite often they're not as well.
Do you remember the incident where there was time lost to injury? What happened there? Do you know? Do you remember?
Through the chair to Councilor Sonnenberg, given the fact of confidentiality, I do recall the incident, but I can't get into details with it for obvious reasons.
Further? If not? Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Through you to Bill, two things, Bill. One, actual raw food costs. I know in the third quarter they jumped substantially there. Is there a reason for that? And then it goes way down. That's on page 20.
Through the chair to Councilor Brunton. So you're referring to the third quarter, 174,000?
Yeah.
Again, that would be when there are things being purchased moving forward for the upcoming seasons. We do have two big celebrations in there for residents, one being Thanksgiving and Remembrance Day. There's different dinners. There's no real indication. If you look at, for example, if you look at the first quarter as compared to the second quarter, it did go up. And then the fourth quarter, which is traditionally a higher quarter with Christmas and everything else, it went down. So it would just be on how many weeks per month and what the stock was at that time bought. There's not a rhyme or reason to the season.
Okay. All right. And the other question I have, and I've asked this before, Bill, physiotherapy, it's a contract, you told me. And am I right, it's up in 2017? I've had some physiotherapists asking about this contract and if it's people get to bid on it.
Through the chair to Councilor Brunton, I do not believe it is up in 2017, but without having the contract in front of me, I couldn't tell you the exact date.
Well, can we find out? I like to pass that on to some people that are interested in it.
Through the chair to Councilor Brunton, not a problem at all. I can send that out if you'd like an email.
All right, that's fine. Thank you.
Further? If not, I need a mover that staff report HS 1703, continuous quality improvements and indicators reports, fourth quarter 2016, be received as information. Councillor Wells, are you moving that? Yes. Thank you. Moving on to page 22. Sorry? I thought I asked everybody, so everybody put up their hand. So, okay, now we're doing it. All right. No, I'm not a rookie up there. I thought that we were doing both, you and... okay. Where are we here? I'll get to the right one. You're confusing out of me. Assessment-based management services from staff report FS 1715.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, this report is presented to Council to request approval to engage the services of a company called MTAG, which is the municipal tax, okay, I've lost their name. Oh, heavens. They provide, I can't find what, I know what the acronym is, it's MTAG. Okay, it's the Municipal Tax Advisory Group. And what they do is they have a program where they review our assessment roll to do what they call asset-based management, to review the assessment base to see if there are any things not in there, new properties that should be in there that aren't, or that aren't assessed properly, and so on. The fee to them is equal to the amount of money, a share of the amount of money that is generated with new assessment. And so there shouldn't really be any cost to Norfolk County. Hopefully that they will find sufficient assessment and it will make the whole thing worthwhile. Experience with some other municipalities is, in fact, that's been the case where they found significant amounts of assessment that more than covered the cost of the service. And the long-term benefit is that once that assessment is in the assessment roll, it's in the base, it's in there forever. So it's an ongoing source of additional revenue. We're asking the council approve this for 2017. We'll review it before the 2018 budget is presented, and we may make a recommendation that we make this more permanent. The service that they're going to be providing, some municipalities do it in-house. That would be an option too, but we don't have the staff resources to do it. We do have somebody who does work on reviewing the assessment roll and tries to pick up assessment that's been missed. But this person also has a bunch of other responsibilities, so they can't dedicate a full time to work on it. And I think that's about as much as I can give you by way of introduction. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to John. John, this is kind of like if Impact do the assessments, right?
Yes.
And I think in most cases, assessments are less than what people think their property is worth. And I find that. But this is really going out to look for them to try and, I guess, like Big Brother looking over our shoulder, trying to find out if somebody should be paying more assessment on their property. Is that a safe way of putting it?
In some respects, Mr. Chairman, that's correct, but there are also situations where, and I can give you some examples that are relatively easy. Commercial enterprises that are being done in a home, a business running in a home that isn't being assessed, properties that aren't being assessed properly, and these guys work with MPAC, and MPAC is really happy to work with them because that helps them make the roll cleaner and better. But it's what they're looking for is they're looking for assessment that isn't there today that should be there. They're not going to go to your house and say, wow, your house is worth a whole lot more, we should increase the assessment. No, but if you had an addition built on your house and it wasn't assessed, that's the kind of thing that they would pick up.
But shouldn't Impact do that?
Yes, but they don't do a really good job at it. We pick up a lot of assessment ourselves, particularly commercial assessment, but we don't have the time to do the in-depth study that these guys would do.
Thank you.
Councillor Oliver, then Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a comment and then a question to Mr. Ford, but my comment is in further to Councillor Brunton's question. Council in committee will recall a number of weeks ago, I requested, I guess, that we consider using these folks relative to gas company infrastructure that was being appealed, not only in our county, but in other municipalities as well, which would have resulted in a significant reduction in assessment. and presumably at some point then a loss in tax revenue to the county. So to Mr. Ford, I guess that is another example of how we could have and might in the future use these folks to, if you like, fight requests for assessment reduction. Is that also part of their mandate?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, they do offer that service as well, but that's not the service we want to contract with them for right now.
Okay.
We may consider that. They have a number of other different assessment services that they provide as well, but this is the one that we think is the most lucrative or the most, will give us the best return. But we'll certainly keep their card handy if we do run into a similar situation that Councillor Oliver's talking about some other assessment sector looking for a reduction.
Thank you. And my question, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Ford is on page 3 of the report, fourth paragraph down from the top, where the report talks about their fee, their MTAG proposing an upset fee of $55,000, which they believe would be recovered. Will they incur time of their own volition, or will they only implement work if we ask them to do something specific?
Through Mr. Chairman, it's a bit of a combination of both. What they're saying is they think they need to spend $55,000 to do the level of review of our assessment role that needs to be done. They're confident that they will collect more than that, much more than that is what they've said in terms of assessment that's new assessment. That's based on their experience with other municipalities. However, what they have said also is when they do the first step in their process, if the assessment roll looks cleaner than they anticipated, that they will just walk away and we won't owe them anything.
Councillor Black and then Height.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And just wondering if they would also do work on to pick up business improvement area tax, because I do recall the BIA a number of years ago were in a quandary why some businesses on Norfolk Street North and then South, and I think it was because they used to be houses and they were converted to commercial, and I'm not sure if the commercial was picked up, but the BIA tax wasn't picked up. So would they also be looking at things like that? Because that did add to the revenue stream of Simcoe's BIA.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would say the answer to that would be yes. They're not going to go out looking for BIA assessment, but they'd be going out looking at commercial assessment in the core area, if you will, and that by itself will generate BIA levies as well. But I would expect that they would look at all of those properties, particularly in the core business areas, because there's a lot of those situations that you did talk about.
Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a question, I guess, more as a comment. I believe that we pay MPAC somewhere around in the neighborhood of $1 million per year for a service, do we not? Right? I'm pretty sure 900K to $1 million?
It's closer to 2.
Closer to 2.
Yes.
And we're going to eat $55,000 because they can't afford to do their job?
I'm not going to say that, Mr. Chairman, that we're going to eat $55,000 because MPAC's not doing their job. What I'm going to say is that MPAC may very well catch assessment, but they may not catch it in a timely manner. If assessment hasn't been, like if we discover an assessment that for a building, for a commercial operation, that's been there for 4 years. We can't go back 4 years and collect the taxes. We can only go back 2. So had we had somebody doing that 4 years ago, we would have collected 4 years worth of taxes, not 2. MPAC can and does find all kinds of things like that, but this will do it a lot faster. They use a modeling program that they've written that MPAC actually uses, and that's how they find, the first run through in terms of where they need to look.
Right, like So MPAC, or is it MTAG that does the About My Property? Who
MPAC does the About My Property.
MPAC, because like I've used that program before, it's pretty handy, and you can see the roles. Well, like, I've had some inquiries from constituents about, oh, there's a building here, and then when you look at it, the assessment is farmland, so they're not being taxed on that building. And if you do bring it to MPAC's attention, you never know if it actually comes back on the roll or not, because they don't ever get back to you. Is that what we will expect from this? We'll get a report and it'll say, oh, we found $60,000 worth of missed information and here you go?
That's potentially what we'd see. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that it? I'll read the recommendation that report FS 1715, assessment-based management services, be received as information, and that council exempt staff from the quotation and tendering process as outlined in Norfolk County Purchase Policy EBS 02 and permit a single source supply for assessment-based management services. And further, that the treasurer be authorized to enter into an agreement with the Municipal Tax Advisory Group to provide assessment-based management services to Norfolk County for 2017. Do I have a mover? I keep calling you that today. Mayor Luke. Okay. All those in favor? Go ahead. Yes?
I'm going to certainly support the motion. Am I correct in assuming then that this would only be a one-year agreement for 2017 and that staff will come back to council if they want a further relationship over future years? Correct. Thank you.
Nodding his head. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to staff report FS 1716, final 2017 budget adjustments. Mr. Ford.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to council, this is basically an information memo. Council gave a whole bunch of instructions as the budget review was winding up. For example, the first one, deduct $30,000 for mileage across the board and leave that for staff to figure out where, and all the way down the line. There were several things that were left for staff to do, and staff have met on number of occasions to review those and deal with them. And what this is saying to you is it doesn't require any resolution per se, because you passed all the resolutions during the budget review. This is just information saying you told us to do this. This is what we did.
Councillor Columbus, Oliver, and Wells.
I move the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one item in particular in the report that is of concern to me, and it relates to at the bottom of page 27 of our agenda, page 2 of the report, where under $70,000 being reduced from Health and Social Services materials and supplies budgets, right at the very bottom of the last paragraph, you'll see that staff at this point felt they had to reduce $20,000 from the local food purchase for the residents of Norview as part of reaching this $70,000 target. And to me, that would probably be the very last place that I would have hoped that we could have found this reduction. I certainly, although I wasn't there the day this was done on the 30th of January, I do support council's direction now that it was given. But, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion if I could. And if you'll allow me, I'll read what I have and then
Okay.
I'll see if there's a support for it. This would just be to put the $20,000 back into the buy local food budget for Norview residents and to find that same $20,000 that we cut from levy-funded capital. So let me just read what I have. The amendment, Mr. Chair, would be that the $20,000 proposed to be removed from the Norview local food purchases budget as part of the materials and supplies reduction by that resolution on January 30th, which is resolution 52, not be taken from this budget and instead be removed from 2017 levy-funded capital for Norview. And that's my rationale, Mr. Chair. I would suggest that we could do without $20,000 worth of capital somewhere in the levy-funded budget more easily than, and more appropriately than we can deprive the residents there from eating local food as part of their overall diet. So that's my amendment. I hope council will support it.
Okay, Councillor Columbus, did I have you? Yes?
Well, I move the recommendation, but if Ms. Miranda and Mr. Nolan are happy with that, I support the amendment.
Okay. Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I read this report with great interest. I was actually just very surprised by some of it. I thought at first I would need a vote of reconsideration because considering some of the wording that left when we left our budget. Our budget specifically says for the very first one that mileage for all county departments be reduced by an amount of $30,000. Here it appears we have a reduction of $28,000. Did we change our minds? I don't remember changing my mind. Maybe while I go on, maybe the treasurer could pull up the FMW so we can have a look back at mileage then. Right, and the library board, okay, we don't have much control over that. Now, as far as the health and social